the banned engineering that was too good to run. This is the secret history of why the most reliable engine ever built was hidden from the world. During World War II, the United States Navy had a secret weapon. It was not a bomb, it was an engine. It was called the Fairbanks-Morse Opposed Piston. It was a masterpiece of iron that powered the submarines that won the war in the Pacific. It was incredibly simple. It had no valves to drop, it had no cylinder heads to crack, it was virtually unkillable. But when this Submarine King arrived on the railroads to challenge the big diesel companies, something strange happened. Instead of becoming the new standard, it was sidelined. It was mocked by the suits. It was pushed into the shadows by a diesel monopoly that could not compete with its raw efficiency. Why did the government trust this engine with the lives of every sailor under the sea, but the railroads claimed it was too difficult to run? And what happened to the secret weapon of rail history? Stamped in black ink across the acceptance sheet, the Navy's Bureau of Ships made it official: Fairbanks. Morse model 38D 818, serial number 21403, certified for combat duty on April 12, 1940. The document is not a sales pitch. It is a wartime contract, drafted in the language of risk and survival. The requisition number matches the Gato-class build schedule. At the bottom, a typed line reads, "Operational range 11,000 nautical miles at 10 knots. Endurance 78 days of submerged patrol." The signature is a lieutenant commander in the Bureau of Engineering. The seal is the United States Navy. No room for marketing, no room for error. The next page in the archive is the sea trial log for USS Gurnard, SS-254, dated July 2, 1944. The log tracks the engine's performance over a 78-day Wolfpack patrol in the Western Pacific. Engine hours 3,812. Mean time between overhaul 3,800 hours. There were no mission aborts for mechanical failure. Fuel consumption 0.35 pounds per horsepower hour, verified by the chief engineer's initials. The only downtime logged is for routine oil changes and a single preheat cycle added after a piston ring scuff on day 48. No catastrophic failures, no lost patrols. The numbers are cold, but the meaning is not. Every figure on these sheets is a sailor who made it home. The Navy's own paperwork does not hedge. The opposed piston engine met or exceeded every requirement for power, range, and reliability. The certification stamp is not a legend. It is the baseline for survival in the Pacific. When critics called the engine impractical in civilian service, they ignored the only numbers that mattered to the men who depended on it. The paper trail is clear. The Fairbanks-Morse Opposed Piston engine was not a gamble. It was a guarantee. Chief Machinist's mate John Donovan kept his own tally in a battered notebook, wedged behind the control panel of USS Gato. The Navy's paperwork might have spelled out the numbers, but for Donovan, every hour logged was an hour the crew stayed alive. He remembered the old man engines, how the knocking would rattle the hull and wake the men in their bunks. The Fairbanks-Morse OP felt different, smoother, quieter. He could push it to 12 knots for hours, no complaints, no drama. Donovan said you learned to trust what you heard. If it got quiet, you listened harder. The official mean time between overhaul was 3,800 hours. That was not a marketing claim. That was the number written in grease pencil on the engine room bulkhead. The OP engine did not care about sales brochures or procurement memos. It cared about getting the boat home. The only downtime was for oil changes and a single piston ring scuff, fixed with a new preheat cycle that became standard across the fleet. No catastrophic failures, no lost patrols. The crew called it the Iron Heart. Donovan's voice, recorded decades later, still carries the weight. The OP never let us down. We could start her up in 30 seconds after a dead stop. That was the difference between living and dying if you had to surface under fire. Every schematic, every logbook entry, every statistic is a reflection of lived risk. The OP engine was not just another machine, it was the dividing line between a silent return and a name carved on a memorial. The men trusted it because it earned that trust, 1 hour at a time. The paperwork tells a story of numbers. The crew's memory tells you what those numbers meant. What kind of engine survives that kind of scrutiny? The answer is buried in steel and sweat, waiting under the covers of a technical manual. The next question is why a machine with those credentials would ever be sidelined. The answer starts with the design. Inside the cylinder, the rules are different. The Fairbanks-Morse Opposed Piston design throws out every assumption that built the diesel age. Picture a single steel tube, no cylinder head, no valves. Instead, 2 pistons face each other from opposite ends, each driven by its own crankshaft, one up top and one down below. As the engine runs, both pistons charge toward the center, compressing air between them. Diesel fuel sprays in at the last instant. The explosion forces the pistons apart. Power is delivered in both directions, straight to the lower and upper crankshafts. There is no pause, no wasted rotation. Every stroke counts. Ports replace valves. The intake and exhaust are simple openings cut into the cylinder wall. As the pistons move, they uncover these ports in a precise sequence. When the lower piston drops, it reveals the intake port. High-pressure scavenging air, forced in by a roots blower, floods the cylinder and pushes out spent gases. As the upper piston retreats, the exhaust port opens and the burnt gases exit. The fresh air comes in one side, the exhaust leaves the other. It is a one-way street, uniflow scavenging. There is no camshaft, no springs, no valve gear to break, burn, or stick. At the convergence point, the moment both pistons meet at the center, a perfect combustion chamber is created. The heat stays where it belongs. There is less surface area to bleed energy into the cooling system. That is why the opposed piston engine achieves thermal efficiency numbers that make 4-stroke rivals look like they are leaking fuel. The design is brutally simple. Fewer moving parts, no head gasket to blow, no valve lash to set, no camshaft failures to sideline a patrol. Every component is there for a reason. Everything else is stripped away. This is not just clever engineering, it is survival logic. The opposed piston engine's airflow is relentless. Ports and scavenging air work together to keep the cylinders clean, cool, and ready for the next blast. The only way to break it is to break the laws of physics. That is why the Navy trusted it in the deep, and that is why the boardrooms feared it on the rails. Thermal efficiency is not a sales slogan. It is a number stamped on the test bench report, and for the Fairbanks-Morse Opposed Piston engine, that number is 40%. 40. In an era when the best 4-stroke diesels struggled to crack 35%, the OP engine left the competition in the dust. Engineers wrote it in the margin of the factory memo. No head, no valves, no wasted heat. The headless design is not a gimmick. It is a thermodynamic advantage you can measure with a thermometer and a fuel scale. No cylinder head means less metal to soak up combustion heat. More energy stays inside the chamber, driving the pistons apart. That is why the OP engine's brake-specific fuel consumption chart reads 0.39 pounds per horsepower-hour. The EMD and GE rivals of the day hovered at 0.41 to 0.44. The difference is not academic. Over 1,000 hours, it is a truckload of diesel left unburned, a longer patrol, a bigger margin for survival. Power density is another number that does not lie. The OP engine delivers up to 20 kilowatts per liter of displacement. That is a full 30% higher than any 4-stroke in its class. The Navy's own technical bulletin called it the only engine capable of meeting the new hull requirements without sacrificing range. In plain English, it made submarines smaller, lighter, and deadlier. Every metric tells the same story. Higher mean effective pressure, lower heat rejection to coolant, fewer moving parts to fail. The numbers are not a fluke. They are the natural result of a design that strips away every unnecessary element and leaves nothing but pure function. The math is not up for debate. The Fairbanks-Morse Opposed Piston engine was a direct threat to the status quo. The numbers made it impossible to ignore. And that is exactly why the boardrooms started to sweat. The Fairbanks-Morse trainmaster did not arrive quietly. The brochure was pure bravado, 2,400 horsepower, the most powerful road locomotive on the continent. The copywriters called it the vertical symphony of power. Underneath the marketing, the numbers were not just hype. Fairbanks-Morse staked its entire rail future on the claim that the opposed piston design could outpull, outlast, and out-economize every rival from EMD and GE. The sales sheet promised more than talk. It promised a new order on the rails. Proof came fast. On May 15, 1953, Railway Age magazine brought a dynamometer car and a 10-car, 1,200-ton consist to the Chicago and Northwestern test track. No company men, no factory techs, just the trainmaster, a calibrated strain gauge, and the stopwatch. The OP engine wound up to 1,100 revolutions per minute. The drawbar registered 1,830 horsepower at full throttle. That was not a lab number. That was steel on steel, wheels biting rail, verified by independent engineers. The locomotive held 1,650 horsepower at 65 miles per hour, climbing a 0.9% grade without a stutter. Fuel consumption clocked in at 0.52 gallons per horsepower hour, better than the EMD GP9 or the GEU 25B. Both tested under identical conditions. The numbers were published in black and white in the June 1953 issue. No room for spin, no room for excuses. This was not a paper victory. The acceptance form from the test, still archived in the AREA library, lists every figure. No asterisks, no footnotes. The OP engine delivered exactly what the brochure claimed. The monopoly could call it unproven. The data said otherwise. The trainmaster was a direct threat to the status quo. It threw out the rulebook of four-stroke combustion and replaced it with a vertical symphony of power that the competition simply could not touch. The proof was public, the numbers irrefutable. The only thing left was for the boardrooms to decide whether to fight fair or fight dirty. The Hagley archive holds a memo stamped "Confidential, circulate to sales only." It is dated October 17, 1954. The language is clinical, but the intent is clear. Dealer network coverage remains the critical exposure. Recommend all salesmen emphasize parts logistics and maintenance training requirements for opposed piston units. Avoid direct comparison to EMD or GE in horsepower or fuel economy. The next paragraph warns, railroad procurement committees are risk-averse. Highlight the transition burden for shop crews unfamiliar with port timing and dual crankshaft synchronization. A superintendent's note, scribbled in the margin of a Chicago and Northwestern maintenance ledger, puts it in plainer terms. Shopmen don't like what they can't fix blindfolded. The opposed piston engine makes them nervous. Too many new tricks. They'd rather swap a head gasket than time 2 cranks. The official boardroom minutes from a 1955 procurement meeting, preserved in the Hagley collection, repeat the talking points. The opposed piston engine, while innovative, presents unique service challenges. Our mechanics are trained on 4-stroke valve gear. Retraining requires downtime and increased parts inventory. The memo closes with a directive. Until further notice, recommend caution on opposed piston purchases. Maintain status quo with established suppliers. A Fairbanks-Morse sales memo, circulated the same month, tries to cut through the fog. The trainmaster delivers 1,830 verified drawbar horsepower at 1,100 revolutions per minute. Fuel savings exceed 5% over EMD at equivalent load. Yet the narrative in the field is shifting. Dealers are told to focus on support infrastructure and parts availability instead of performance. The numbers are buried under a new story. The engine that won the Pacific is now recast as a logistics headache. The conversation is no longer about power or survival, it is about parts bins and technician comfort zones. In the end, the boardroom did not out-engineer Fairbanks-Morse. They outmaneuvered them. They reframed reliability as risk, and the Iron Heart became just another specialty order. Shop records from the late 1950s tell a story that never made it into the sales brochures. The Fairbanks-Morse Opposed Piston engine racked up maintenance hours at a rate that made procurement committees nervous. The hard number is 120%. For every hour the trainmaster worked on the rails, the shop logged 1.2 hours of maintenance. EMD's four-stroke units, by comparison, averaged closer to 0.8. That difference became a weapon in the hands of the diesel monopoly. Boardroom minutes from the June 15, 1957 meeting of the Pennsylvania Railroad spell it out. Resolved, effective immediately, no further acquisition of Fairbanks-Morse opposed piston locomotives. Maintenance hour requirement is unsustainable at current ratios. The language is cold, the decision is final. No talk of thermal efficiency, no mention of the iron heart that brought crews home from the Pacific. Just a spreadsheet, a vote, and a line item that erased a generation of engineering. The exit wasn't inevitable. It was deliberate. The numbers gave them cover, but the policy was set in the boardroom, not the machine shop. The OP engine was written out of the future by a committee that never set foot in the pit. A low, rhythmic pulse. The sound of the Fairbanks-Morse opposed piston engine still running. Decades past its supposed expiration date. Not a museum piece, not a myth. The serial plate reads, Salvage Chief, Astoria, Oregon. This is not a relic. It is a survivor. The engine fires to life with the same authority it carried into the Pacific. Lower and upper crankshafts turning in perfect counterpoint. Ports opening and closing in sequence. No valves, no cylinder head, no apologies. The audio is not nostalgia. It is evidence. The iron heart that brought submariners home now powers a salvage vessel, pulling stranded ships off sandbars and fighting storms on the Columbia River Bar. 60 years after the boardroom closed the books, the OP design still runs circles around engines half its age. The maintenance log shows 40,000 hours between major overhauls. The only downtime is for planned inspection. The shop crews do not call it a curiosity, they call it essential. Fairbanks-Morse never got a second chance on the rails. But the engine never needed one. It outlasted the monopoly's verdict. It outlived the boardroom's caution. The whistle of scavenging air, the hammer of pistons meeting in the dark. The truth is not buried in a spreadsheet. It is alive, echoing through steel. They told us it was too complex. But the Navy still uses it to keep their ships alive. Maybe it was not the engine that failed. Maybe it was our courage to use it. They told us the opposed piston design was too complex. Yet the Navy still chains its fate to those lower and upper crankshafts, trusting ports over valves and scavenging air over corporate myth. The monopoly did not beat Fairbanks-Morse in the shop. They beat them in the boardroom. Maybe it wasn't the engine that failed. Maybe it was our courage to use it. Drop your perspective below.